Welcome to the All New Marvel Roundup, your weekly guide to the Marvel Comics of the Week. I am Phil, and with me as always is...
Charlie, yes sir.
Alright, let's jump in. For the first time ever, I think, we got none of the same books, so we'll swing back and forth. I will start with my big disappointment of the week, Ant-Man Larger Than Life #1. Basically, there's 3 stories in here. Only one's an original story. It doesn't say specifically when it takes place, but just in Hank Pym's lab years ago. And Hank's working on his Ant-Man technology, specifically the technology he uses to communicate with the ants and other insects, and he's testing it out, and some of the insects he can talk to, others are ignoring him. So he decides to shrink down and get more face-to-face with them. So he puts on an Ant-Man suit, which suspiciously looks like the suit from the upcoming movie. And...
what are you at?
I don't know if they're retconning or what. But he shrinks down. Like I said, some of the insects are talking to him, some start to attack him, so he's gonna enlarge, but then he realizes the triggers that release the enlarging formula or whatever are broken, so he has to get to the actual formula, which is across the room, of course. So he has to lead the good insects against the bad insects until he gets across the room and enlarges himself. The story just seemed, pardon the pun, small. And then, like I said, that's the only original story. The last 2 stories are reprints of, I believe, Hank Pym's first 2 appearances. Tales to Astonish 27, and what was the other one? 35? Yeah, 35. Like I said, I don't know, this might be my first one. I'm giving this book a thumbs down. I would say, if you're not familiar with the Ant-Man character at all, you might want to pick this up, get you familiar with Ant-Man history, but, I mean, it might make you confused in the movie, because it's Hank Pym in this book, not Scott Lang, so, like I said, thumbs down.
Yeah. Well, I think that's sort of what it was sort of like a primer for the... why I didn't buy it. Is that it was sort of meant as a primer for the Ant-Man character within the comics universe, and then you can sort of extrapolate that into your movie universe. Okay. Let's see. Who do I want to start with? Well, you know, what's interesting for me this week is that none of my stories take place on Battleworld this week. Well, that's not entirely true. And actually, I'm gonna open up with what I'm gonna say is my pick of the week. Thumbs up this week for Howard the Duck #4, and this is an interesting tale. Essentially, so last issue, as you may recall, Howard had freed the senior citizens, including Aunt May, from the power of Ringmaster, which doesn't have to do that. Anyway, and Talos the Untamed, who is a Skrull who cannot change, but makes up for it in other ways, like he's super strong and nigh invulnerable. And he has what is called the jewelry that Felicia Hardy, the Black Cat, originally stole, and that Howard then stole back to give to Talos when he thought he was Richard's, is something called an abundant gem. And remember that, it's an abundant gem. They go to Doctor Strange's house to get some assistance with finding the other abundant gems, because it sounds like these are dangerous, because Talos wants to, prove himself to the Skrull Empire and use the abundant gems to do so. They go to Doctor Strange's house. The tattoo girl, oddly enough, does not want to go into Doctor Strange's house. She finds magicians creepy. So, just goes to show you can't judge a book by its cover. And Howard, of course, goes right in, barges right in. Wong tells Howard that Doctor Strange is currently battling the demon Fog over battling the demon Fog for control of the universal concept of sadness. He falls into a cosmic realm and quickly loses his bearings, but is gathered up by some strange demon-looking things who say, "You are here for the game, the game." And they drag him over and throw him in to Doctor Strange's floating poker game, which is apparently something he does to get away from and then who can be a bit of a drag. I think this kind of plays on how you might see Doctor Strange depicted in the movies. So he's at a poker game with Dog and some demon woman, and what I swear is Death from Bill and Ted, but I'm not sure. And they're playing poker, and basically they bust up the game. Doctor Strange and how the Duck return. Doctor Strange decides to help help Howard figure out what's going on with these abundant gems. And what it is the abundant gems are like the infinity gems, but not as much. Because they're not infinite, they're just abundant. And the amount of power that they have. And they form the abundant glove. And the abundant gems are compassion, laughter, dance, respect, and a second dance gem for some reason. Individually, they do very little, but together they can make someone marginally powerful. And marginal, like, destroy the only world I've ever known since my last one. Yes, potentially. So they're trying to divine where they are, and they realize that they are at Pier 4, where the Fantastic Four used to make their home. And it turns out that what it was this was a gem that Johnny Storm had found on Battleworld. And we get a great little tie-in to the original Secret Wars and to Deadpool's Secret Wars, because in the background we see Deadpool with his Deadpool shield and the girl that Deadpool was flirting with last issue, as Johnny Storm is trying to match on all the young ladies. He brought the gem back to New York with him. However, when Pier 4 got destroyed, it got lost. Plotline. The gem gets stolen by Talos, who now has 2 of the abundant gems. Well, maybe he has all of them. Actually, it looks like he now has all of the abundant gems. And Howard the Duck is going to have to defeat him to save the planet. Why I love this book. The big thumbs up, because it is such a great deconstruction of superhero concepts and characters, and and here's the main. Marvel has to do a Howard the Duck film. Howard the Duck film, because it didn't exist within the largest superhero universe, so there was nothing for Howard the Duck to deconstruct as a character, to be the sane being in the world gone mad. He was the insane being in a world that was being made insane by his presence. Howard the Duck is the same being in the world gone mad. The Marvel Cinematic Universe is a world gone mad. Howard the Duck should be in it. And Howard the Duck #4, I think, really emphasizes why a Howard the Duck movie, or at least a Netflix series, set in the MCU, is exactly what Disney needs to do next. So what's your next book there, Phil?
It's Black Widow 19. All across the front cover it says The Last Days of Black Widow. There's the Secret Wars logo. But meanwhile, only page 1 of this book actually could be classified as Secret Wars, because it's Natasha talking to Sam Wilson, and she's about to board a ship. It looks like it's kind of explaining how her and Spider-Woman were on that ship in the first Secret Wars issue, because I guess they're talking about her. Well, Sam's telling her, you can't save all of them, but you can save some of them. And it's her talking about, if it's the last thing I do, I'll make something good. And that was the first page. The rest of the issue is a flashback. Has nothing to do with Secret Wars. It's Natasha, newly, I guess, graduated from the Red Room. Her superior sent her to Cuba to meet up with her friend Marina, who is trying to, without coming out and telling them they're spies, who are trying to get this Cuban couple from leaving the Communist Party, basically, and going with the Americans. I don't know if they fully explain why they want this couple. Wait, yeah, they really don't say, but her mission is to take them back to Russia so they don't get with the American government. And basically, Natasha and Marina try to convince them nicely, without saying they're spies. Natasha's quote-unquote an importer-exporter who wants to do business with a couple. And they're like, thanks, but no thanks. And then Natasha basically blows up their cars. The husband's about to leave, and they're supposed to think it's an attack on them, I guess, by the Americans. And then at the end of the issue, Natasha meets with her superior from the Red Room, and she's like, how's everything going? She's like, good, I think we're going to be able to bring them in. Marina's working out well, and her superior says, well, she wears her costume, quote-unquote, too eagerly. He said, at the very last panel, it says, you'll have to remove her when this operation is finished, so I don't know if we're going to see in the flashback like a cold calculating Natasha, and then the whole Secret Wars thing is about her removing more quote-unquote red from her ledger before the world ends in Secret Wars. I don't know. I kind of felt a little bit cheated when they're like Secret Wars on the cover, and basically the first page was Secret Wars related at all. So, Black Widow 19, I'm going to give it a thumb 3/4 up.
Yeah, that's a common a gag. They used to do that all the time with the old Secret Wars tie-ins, where you would just have like the Beyonder being one panel of the story, and then it was gone. And I think that's sort of the gag in the fact that they say that the Howard the Duck was a Marvel superhero Secret Wars tie-in, a Deadpool Secret Wars tie-in, not a Secret Wars tie-in. Is the fact that, again, you get one page of the Secret Wars tie-in that is also the Deadpool Secret Wars tie-in, but nothing that actually much to the story, It's the gag. Okay. So my next book, again, 616, not in the Secret Wars vein, but we have, inspired by the hit TV series S.H.I.E.L.D., Quake versus Mr. Hyde. And this is quite interesting how they're sort of dancing with the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. characters and storyline, while at the same time not violating the 616 continuity. So, of course, they tracked down Hyde, who lost his criminal empire in Los Angeles recently. I don't know what that was about, but it apparently happened. They depower him, and Quake is the one who captures them. And this is sort of like their big family reunion, apparently. And, of course, they have the depowered Hyde looking like Kyle MacLachlan, very much, and very much meets that character's the way the character is described. He's very much within that. They also tie in that Quake's mom had Inhuman DNA, and what they're essentially suggesting here is that Kelvin had been messing with the Hyde formula long, because he said he never became Hyde until after she was born, but he had been messing around with rewriting his own DNA prior to that, and he, as a result, Quake's powers are now acting up because she's sort of hiding, becoming a hide. It's breaking her bones. She's got the gloves that she has in the TV series right now to sort of keep her from breaking her own bones with her powers. So it's very interesting how they've managed to tie things together nicely with the TV series. Well, like I said, at the same time, keeping within the pre-established continuity. They give they do Zebo, Kelvin Zebo does manage to and they do play on the Ward Sky dynamic here with not Ward Sky, I'm sorry, the Coulson Sky dynamic, having him call Daisy Johnson Sky. They say that that's a nickname she currently has because she spends most of her time in space. So anyway, Zebo cures the ill effects and then becomes Hyde, and then he's going to give her a dose of the proper Hyde formula so that she'll be properly hided out and they can be a family again. And then Coulson prevents that, injects himself with the Hyde formula so that he can fight Hyde. However, Hyde makes the point that, when you first get the powers, it's very awkward. You can't really control yourself very well. And then, essentially, to save Phil, Fitz runs into it because there was a point that was made at the beginning of the book that when Zebo becomes Hyde, he's not just an intelligent Hulk. He has all of his basic emotions heightened, which is his anger, his lust, his jealousy, and his fear. So he gets very paranoid. When Fitch jumps into the fight, Coulson sort of focuses himself and attacks because the most basic emotion in Phil is protecting his friend. Daisy then drops Hyde down a big hole by causing seismic damage, which they say, and they'll dig him out later. It was a fun book. It's nice to see how they're playing with these established TV characters, moving them within the Marvel universe, and for what it's in a nice way. As I mentioned previously, they showed flowers, non-exposed to Teragenesis flowers in the Inhuman books a couple weeks back. So it's going to be nice to see how the MCU influences the greater Marvel universe and how the greater Marvel universe influences the MCU. And next month we get Agent May and Evil's Butt. So that'll be fun. Thumbs up on that one. That was a good book.
All right. Well, my next one is my pick of the week, Daredevil number 16. If everyone remembers last issue, Jubila Pride, who is the daughter of Leland Owsley, came to Matt looking for his help in locating her father, who had disappeared. They finally track him down. He's a prisoner of the Shroud on Alcatraz Island, but the Shroud has the Owl hooked up to some machine where he can basically surveil anyone. He could see through every cell phone, computer screen, TV, any electronic device like that. Like a really big, huge surveillance weapon. But they're unable to free the Owl, so Jubila and Matt are able to escape. But once they do, the Shaw broadcasts the personal information of all of Matt's friends, like Foggy and his girlfriend Kirsten, because Matt's identity is known to the whole world now. But now all his friends have targets on their back, so at the end of the last issue we saw that Matt only had one choice to hopefully put the genie back in the bottle, and that was to go to Wilson Fisk. So that's where this issue opens up. Matt's meeting with Wilson, and he's laying the whole thing out for him, like the Kingpin doesn't already know, but Matt says, we have a common enemy in the Shroud with the Owl, basically helpless, and he says, I need your help to keep my friends safe, and Wilson Fisk says, well, how do you expect me to do that? And Matt says, well, just one word from the Kingpin, and everyone will be protected. He's like, you can speak to some people in high places, and people will quote-unquote forget whatever they know. And the Kingpin says, well, that's interesting, but what do I get out of it? And Matt says, I offer you the death of Matt Murdock. Interested? And then they pull out as after he says that, and they're standing in a the Kingpin's own little art gallery, and every painting in this art gallery is Daredevil getting killed in different scenarios. But then the Kingpin says, I thought you were a devout Catholic. He says, isn't suicide a mortal sin? And he says, you misunderstand. Daredevil still lives. It's Matt Murdock who goes away. He goes, once upon a time, you discovered my secret identity, and that was like this special thing you had over everyone else. He says, but now that my identity is known to the whole world, it's useless. He says, but this way, he's like, you'll create me a new identity, kind of like witness protection. And he says that way, he's like, I'll still be Daredevil, but no one will know my secret identity except for you. And that way you'll have your power back over me. You'll be able to ruin my life whenever you want, but no one else will be able to go after my friends or anything. And so he said, Matt sees Wilson Fisk seems to be enjoying the position he has Matt in. So Matt says, I'll withdraw this offer at noon tomorrow. Now if you'll excuse me, because Matt's found out that the Shroud's going after Julia Carpenter. He was looking for her, his quote unquote girlfriend. So he goes to the airport to try to kidnap her. Matt tries to defeat the Shroud, and Jubila Pride shows up, and basically Jubila says she gets her hands on Julia Carpenter, and she says to the Shroud, well, are you ready to trade her for my father? And that's the last we see with them. The last 2 pages we see the Kingpin. He's out in the hills somewhere, I guess. Was this of San Francisco? He's had all his phones and everything off because the Owl can track him. Then, but he turns on his cell phone, and he's talking to someone, and he's talking about Matt Murdock's offer. He says, he insults me, presuming I've hired well. I already have the power of life over death over Matt Murdock, and we see he sent an assassin to attack Foggy and Kirsten. Foggy's lying in a pool of his own blood, and the assassin has Kirsten by the throat, so Wilson Fisk says, to hell with the Owl. And that's where the issue ends. I think we got a good story about the dynamic between Matt Murdock and the Kingpin. Like I said, big thumbs up, my pick of the week.
Okay. Let's see here. Next, let's do Uncanny Avengers, the end of the Uncanny Avengers. With a little flashback, Magneto telling, that he is their true father, and that, he wanted to come back because he felt, and let them know this because he felt that Quicksilver's life was in shambles, and he wanted them to know the reason he had so much rage was because of him. And then we move to Eve and the Vision discussing, what they're going to do. Eve wants to run for a new planet with their, little robot children, and establish a new world and a new life as there are these new life forms, but Vision wants to stay and help his friends, and she's like, would you put our children on Earth where humans are so violent and can't even stop killing each other, and the only reason they stop killing each other is to kill whatever else is out there that happens to be new, just ask the mutants. So even the children go off, and meanwhile, our heroes are fighting the tree people. Captain America is a tree person, but is fighting the tree people, and all of the new men. Sabretooth is asking, shouldn't one of you smart guys be figuring out a plan now that usually attacking you? Meanwhile, the High Evolutionary is basically not having any of this. He defeats Creed very easily, but then Brother Voodoo comes along and brings all the ghosts of all of the people who had, all of the various new men that he had committed genocide against over the years, and they start attacking him. Meanwhile, Luminous attacks Wanda, saying how she's a failure. She can't even, she can't even control elemental chaos, and she's so awesome. Luminous is, and then the Vision sticks his hand in her brain, and Luminous actually makes the point about how you're going to die knowing you lost everyone stupid enough to ever love you, and Vision says, not everyone. And he has Wanda get up and says that he would never abandon her. And that the High Evolutionary basically blows up all the ghosts. Says he can do that. Sure, why not? Captain America protects with his shield so they don't get blown away. And then the High Evolutionary is about to fly off with Creed and Rogue to use their DNA to do what it is he does. And then Quicksilver basically runs really fast, then proceeds to beat the heck out of the High Evolutionary. Super speed, really, it is the best offensive power. Because unless you also have super speed, you are completely at a disadvantage. And it's kind of fascinating because he beats the armor off of him, and you see the High Evolutionary space, a mishmash of various animal creatures and new men, and I think he's even got a little zombie in him. I don't know, but it is not a pretty sight what he has become. And then Luminous and he escape. The Avengers head on home. The Vision basically realizes that he can't, because he could obviously have his consciousness with Eve and with the other Avengers, but he realized that would make him lose any sense of his own humanity. So he opts not to do that. Instead, you see that Sam Wilson is being turned back into human from his Groot form. Although, hey, I hope we get some Groot Captain America sometime in the future. It might be cool. Every so often they'll turn Captain America, what's his name? Steve Rogers Captain America back into a werewolf. I think the tree Sam Wilson Captain America could be a cute little thing to go back to every now and again. Wanda cannot find Simon's soul anywhere. She thinks it's because he doesn't want to be found, that basically he doesn't want to be manipulated by her anymore. When the Vision saw into the High Evolutionary's cloud, he knows the truth of exactly what Wanda and Pietro are, and what a horrific thing. This is like our next big secret. The Evolutionary Wars are coming. I guess they're just rehashing all their old storylines. First we're going to do Civil Wars, and then the next big event will be the Evolutionary Wars. They're already doing Evolutionary Wars. Quiet, you. But the Evolutionary Wars are coming sometime after Secret Wars. Mark my words. And Pietro and Wanda will be a part of this, and they are... and he says that the truth would crush her. But instead of telling her the truth, he just tells her all the truth she needs to know. Yeah, that's not going to come back to bite you in the Took vision. I knew, I just didn't think you could handle the truth. Because that's exactly what women want to hear when they find that out later. Oh, so you knew the whole time and you just didn't tell me? Thanks, Vision. But he's a robot. He doesn't know any better. Anyway, it ends with Vision telling Wanda that he will always love her until the stars burn out. Irony next week, because there is only Secret Wars. Thumbs up for the book. Great end to it. Great view of family, all that such. What's your next one, Phil?
X-Men 92 #1. It reprints Chapter 1 and Chapter 2, the digital. It's a $4.99 book, kids, so be prepared. This is a Secret Wars book. Yeah, on Battle World. It takes place in the Kingdom of Westchester, some 7,000 miles east of Doomguard, it says. If you read the preview, you saw the first couple pages of them playing laser tag. It's it's supposed to be very similar to the 90s animated series. Wolverine and Cyclops butting heads, Jubilee wanting to do more, go on more missions, Gambit flirting with Rogue. And then the Sentinels attack, even though the X-Men are supposed to be working with the Peacekeepers now, the Bureau of Superpowers, but some Sentinels attack, and the X-Men have to take them out. And then the Baron of this territory shows up, Baron Robert Kelly. He says these were free-range Sentinels that were programmed for evasion, but they lost control of them at a certain point and couldn't track them. Yeah.
No, isn't Kelly also the Baron of Days of Future Past?
I believe so. Yeah.
I wonder if that's the same Kelly or if it's two different Kellys. Interesting question.
Just from the personalities, they seem like two different ones. This one's wearing a cape for some reason. He's wearing a 3-piece suit and a cape.
Cape. Well, he's a Baron.
Yeah. Well, they're saying then they get into a discussion about the Westchester Wars and how after it, the X-Men kind of became peacekeepers and some of the more troublesome mutants were sent to the Clear Mountain Institute, where I guess evil mutants are shown like a new path in life, a better way to do things than, attack humanity. And so the X-Men return to the mansion, and Professor X is talking with Cyclops, and he says, Professor X says, I think the X-Men should go to the Clear Mountain Institute and see what's going on there and investigate. And Cyclops is like, I don't know if this is a good idea. He's like, but I'll go. But Professor, this is my last mission. After this, I'm leaving the X-Men. And then so all the X-Men load in the Blackbird, and of course Cyclops is telling Jean Grey, he's like, after this mission, why don't we take a vacation? Maybe we'll go up north, do a little whale watching. And she's like, oh, that's great. The X-Men arrive at the Clear Mountain Institute, and they meet the director, Cassandra Nova. She gives them a tour. A lot of the evil mutants, I guess, have been reprogrammed because we see Toad and the Blob playing basketball. But the big shock to the X-Men is when they see Sabretooth, and he's like, I don't want to fight. He's like, all my hatred and rage is gone. And then he gives Wolverine a hug.
Aww.
Which really freaked out Wolverine. But later on, we see Professor X back at the mansion alone. He's like, I can't contact the X-Men. It's been a while, so he can't mentally scan the place. There's some kind of blocks around the place, so he jumps onto the astral plane, and there he meets Cassandra Nova. and she seems familiar, and he discovers in a fight with her on the astral plane that she is a clone of him created by Apocalypse. And he says, "You're me somehow, twisted and changed." She says, "I was you, now I'm something better." And then she reveals that she's also, besides being an evil clone of him, that she is possessed by the Shadow King. And Cassandra defeats Xavier. He basically falls out of his wheelchair in the mansion. He's basically having a seizure. And then Cassandra tells most of the X-Men she's going to show them the process she uses for basically reprogramming the evil mutants. For some reason, Jubilee isn't allowed to come, so she goes off with some of the other employees of the Institute, and then the issue ends with Cassandra. She has them all in chairs, which then lock the rest of the X-Men in, and she's going to put them through the process of the reprogramming. I'm going to give this one a thumbs up. It was, if you like the 92 X-Men, you'll probably like this issue. I wouldn't say it was perfect, but it was pretty good. Thumbs up.
That in the chairs?
Mm-hmm. The chairs basically sprouted bindings to hold them in.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I get that. I'm just saying, you should have saw that coming.
Yeah. Oh, you sit down.
Okay. So my last... Yes. I'm the evil person. Sit in this chair while I tell you about how we reprogram people. Here's how we reprogram people. Boop. Yeah, so... But Jubilee will save them because she wasn't allowed to go. Okay. So my last book this week was The Last Days of Loki, Agent of Asgard. Secret Wars. This is it's interesting. It has basically two semi-parallel stories that never touch, which is fine. There is the story of Verity Willis. Verity Willis, for those who don't recall, is Loki's best friend. She can see through any lie, so it's actually kind of a cool power to have if you're going to be friends with Loki. We find out how she got her powers. Apparently, her grandfather was a guy by the name of Eric Willis. If you read Thor 31, or Thor Volume 1, number 345, you'll get some background on, I assume, Eric Willis and an item called The Casket of Ancient Winters. And there are people after that he has to hide. So Eric Willis is going to disappear somewhere. But before he goes, he gives his son a ring. The ring once belonged to Andvari, and there's a spell on it that will see through all lies and illusions. Anyway, he keeps it, he holds on to it, goes up into a man, eventually has a baby, which is Verity Willis, and laying on the ground outside of her crib, which of course the baby promptly picks up and swallows. The ring dissolves and disappears, and suddenly baby Verity can see through every lie. Meanwhile, back in Asgardia, Odin is firing his Gatling gun. Now, as you'll remember from last issue, we had the great secret store of weapons that had the Midgard Cert within the Elements of Hell, and I thought how odd that they all look just like regular Midgardian weapons. Turns out that's because they're all just regular Midgardian weapons. Apparently, that is what they've decided to use to battle the forces of Hell. I'm just going to go along with it. I mean, there's certain arguments that can be made that they actually never make here, that, technological weapons do have certain powers against beasts and magical creatures, but they don't really go into it. They're just firing big guns at them. So that's a little bit disappointing in this. Old Loki is writing Jormungandr, and the basic idea is they're going to destroy Midgard, because if you destroy Midgard, then when the incursion happens, it won't destroy the whole universe, and we'll be able to pick up the pieces from there. Then, back in Verity Willis's story, her growing up and dealing with all everybody says all the time, from, from the fact that it's not a plane when her mom says, "Here comes the airplane," to her parents getting divorced and saying, "It's not your fault." And it says, "He thinks it's true, draw your own conclusions." The guy in her college dorm who, hey, just wants to come back and talk, She basically decides to shut herself in until superhuman registration comes out, and she realizes that if people find out that she has powers and she's not registered, she's in trouble. So she goes and she registers. But as it turns out, she has non-obvious power, no significant threat to the public, no training required. You could join the super team tomorrow if you wanted, but she has a little superhuman ID card. And the show are basically looking for jobs. Unfortunately, no one will let her work from home until she meets a survey company that wants her to tell when people are lying about their age, weight, etc. on their anonymous surveys, because and they said you can work from home. Why she couldn't do any of the other jobs at home, reviewing resumes or fact-checking political statements, we don't know. But this was the one job where they let her work from home. So she basically stayed at home all the time until her mother made her promise to try speed dating, which ties in later because that's how she meets Loki. And she makes the statement, "I promise I'll try it once, but if I end up meeting some weirdo, I'm holding you responsible." Wah, wah. Meanwhile, the Asgardians are fighting the demons, and of course, as soon as an Asgardian falls in battle, they then become part of the armies of hell, because that's how that works. So they're constantly being overpowered. Claire asks Odin why he's not using the Odin power, and he says, "It takes time to rise, Law. It takes time to rise, wife." And she says, "So you have often said." Yeah. It's just not Loki without some double entendre. So essentially, Freya decides to take matters in her own hands. She attacks Loki, kicks him off Jormungandr, and she essentially sacrifices herself to destroy Jormungandr, because that's how you have to destroy Jormungandr. A god must die for Jormungandr to die. And Loki's feeling all proud of himself, but this has given Odin the time he needs. He blows on I can't even pronounce it, Gjallarhorn, and calls all warriors to the final battle for everything. Da-da-da. And then Lorelei and what's his name? Sigurd, broken free from their prison in the Isle of Silence, and may now join the battle next issue. Meanwhile, Verity finishes his story to Loki, who is the girl Loki now, and essentially what she has done is, while she's been telling her story, she has collected Verity's story. Verity is lying on the floor, and Verity is now sort of a spirit ghost story character, and Loki basically says, "Since everything is ending, I thought it was wise to put that story in here," and shows the little bauble. Oh, I wonder if that's one of Franklin's little baubles that he put the whole universe into once. That may come back. And take it out of there. Takes Verity's story out of herself, and she goes, I says, "Hey, trust me, I still know what I'm doing." So, thumbs up for Loki. The Asgardian story, meh, but Loki's story is always big thumbs up. So great story. And now, what are your last books, Phil?
Alright, well, my first one is Korvac Saga #1. It opens up in the Kingdom of Forest Hills, and we see a homeless fellow sitting on a carousel in a park. He's babbling to himself. He's saying, I think I was a monster once upon a time, like in a story, but it wasn't a story. It was real, except not real. The way this is real, I can feel the cold dawn. I wish I understood. It's so confusing. I was a monster, then everything was different. There used to be stars. And he's like, I used to be a monster. I'm going to be one again. And then we see the original Guardians of the Galaxy, the ones from the 31st century, but this seems like present day. They come in, they have to stop this guy because there's like a sickness going around. It's called the madness. And the Guardians say, okay, we've ID'd this guy. His name's Emil Blonsky. So they confront Blonsky, and he says, why are there no stars, Major Victory? And Major Victory's like, stars? And Blonsky says, you don't even know what they are. And the Guardians are like, they're symbols. They have 5 points, like on the Major's shield. And Blonsky's like, what are they symbols for? And they're like, they're just symbols. So this seems to set Blonsky off, and he transforms into a very big version of the Abomination. So the Guardians attack him. They're trying to contain him, but he won't stay down. So they're like, we can't let the sickness spread. The madness can't spread. So Yondo puts an arrow through the Abomination's eye, killing him. And Major Victory says, we have to keep this contained. I don't want to see in the press that they're saying the madness is returning. And then we go to the mansion of the Baron of the Forest Hills Kingdom, and it's Michael Korvac. And he meets with Major Astro, and the Major's telling him the madness is back. We had another case. And Korvac is saying we have to keep this under wraps because the Baron of another kingdom is about to show up for talks. And then we get to the mansion's Sanctum Sanctorum, and it seems the master of the Sanctum Sanctorum is Starhawk. And him and Gina Drake are researching the madness and the people who've been affected. And Starhawk says, we must locate the source of the infection and cure it. It is our enemy now. And Gina says, and if we don't, Starhawk says, then Michael Korvac will seem unable to keep his domain in order. He will have failed to maintain Doom Law. The Thor Corps will be sent in to purge us. And then we get the next Baron. Well, the Baron of the Kingdom of Hollywood. Yes, Hollywood, not Hollywood. Simon Williams. And his group, his bodyguards, whatever, are the Avengers, which are the original Captain Marvel, Marvel, Black Widow, who can't just seem to zipper that darn front of her costume, the Black Panther, Hercules, Yellow Jacket, Moondragon, Jocasta, and the Vision. So they meet with the Guardians, and they want to sweep the area to make sure the madness isn't nearby. And then we get some kind of celebration, almost looks like a press conference, where Korvac and Simon Williams speak. Simon's wearing his Wonder Man costume, so I guess he's fully powered. But his eyes aren't red. It looks like he has regular eyes. So then Karina, Korvac's wife, is making her way through the crowd. And Gina asks her if she's alright. Then Karina says, a wonderful evening. All the stars of Hollywood are here. You should go and watch. And Karina goes to her bedroom, sits in front of the window, and starts going, where are the stars? Where are all the stars? And that's the end of the issue. So I guess she has the quote-unquote madness. Thumbs up.
Yeah. Is it madness?
Yeah. Seems Doom's control was slipping.
Yeah.
All right. And my last issue is one you should be kind of familiar with because you got the first issue. It's Planet Hulk. We see it opens up with Steve and Devil Dinosaur waking up. They must have slept through the night, and the Hulk is still there. The Hulk we saw at the end of the last issue. Remember we were speculating, is this Bruce Banner? It could be, because he tells Steve, call me Doc Green. But he doesn't have a mohawk. And then Steve sees that Doc Green attacked some kind of creature that I guess was gonna attack them. And Steve asks him, he says, in his caveman kind of speak, he's like, you were a doctor? And Doc Green's like, yes, I am. And he's like, are you gonna heal the grub? That's what they call the creature. He's like, you heal the grub? And Doc Green's like, I do not heal the grub. So then Steve pulls out his axe and puts the creature out of his misery because it was already injured and hurt. And I guess Doc Green was experimenting on it and torturing it. And Steve tells Doc Green, he says, even monsters deserve mercy. Don't give me a reason to forget that. And then Doc Green's like, yeah, you may not like me, but you need me to find the Mud Kingdom and to find Bucky. Which was when we get a flashback. It says years ago in a forgotten kingdom, and it's Steve and Bucky, and they seem to be running from a missile attack, and they get caught in the missile attack. Bucky's injured, and Steve picks Bucky up, and Bucky's telling Steve wartime is the only time. And I guess they're talking about joining the Captain America Corps after they see a poster of Captain America, who is the Sam Wilson Captain America. It looks like the Captain America we have right now. Then we're back, and we get a lot of traveling with Doc Green and Barbarian Steve. And then they get attacked by dinosaur creatures who Doc Green calls bullhawks. He said it must be mating season. Devil Dinosaur attacks them. And while Doc Green and Steve try to get away, they get into a river, fall over a waterfall, and then they get attacked by, I don't know if it's supposed to be another Hulk, but it's a huge massive vegetation with almost with a Hulk's head, and that's how the story ends. Thumbs up. Probably the best part that made you think the most was the flashback, but there was some action. I don't blame you for not picking up issue 2, but if you're into the Hulk, you might want to pick it up. Thumbs up.
Yeah. So I don't quite follow. Is Steve a barbarian here? Is he, or because he doesn't seem like he was a caveman in the first one. But he's saying he's sort of doing caveman speak.
He's kind of talking simply. I don't know what they're trying to put across, but even in the flashback, him and Bucky seemed like normal guys. They were talking normal. They were dressed normally. And so I don't know if it's just the trauma or what.
Yeah, I don't know. Don't trust that Doom. I don't know. That's what I'll say.
All right. Well, is that it then?
That's it. That's all I got, except for the stuff we'll talk about in Super Connectivity.
All right. That's right. Follow us later in the week in the Super Connectivity. But if you want to get a hold of us and share your Marvel thoughts with us, please do. You can email me at nightwingpdp@gmail.com, and on Twitter, I'm at nightwingpdp. And remember to go to Facebook and the All New Marvel Roundup and Super Connectivity pages. And Charlie, where can they get a hold of you?
They can find me at superconnectivityblog@gmail.com. Follow me on Twitter, Chester. Which reminds me, I have to go do something on Twitter later, just because I haven't been on Twitter in a few weeks.
All right. Well, that's it for this week. Come back and join us next week, everyone. Because remember, the madness is spreading.